టిఫిన్ చేయలే కదా? కొన్ని తీసుకో.
I think let's start. So last class we talked about classes, objects, and what is there inside pandas also we had kind of roughly seen, right? So today we will look at what is there. Pandas, one second. Mm. So we saw there was inside the pandas library. Right. So basically a module or a package is a collection of variables. Right. So we are not going to use variables. So let's say collection of functions and classes. So inside pandas, you have some functions directly available. So some functions that we will be using quite frequently is read, CSV. I think merge is there. There are other methods, right? So these are all functions which are directly under pandas. And then we have a class, right? So we have a class called data frame. I hope you have not forgotten all about classes and all. And inside this, you have some attributes, right? So you have data, you have index, columns. So these are all attributes. There are many such attributes, right? So shape. So these are all different attributes of data frame, right? So other than that, you have some methods also. So what are the methods available? You have head, tail, so many others, right? So info. So these are all different methods available inside this class. So these are our attributes. Attributes, and these are the functions or methods. By the way, what is the difference between a function and a method? Do you remember? Nobody remembers? These would be functions. And these are methods. What are methods? Methods are functions inside classes. Right, so anything defined within a class is a method. So what is the difference here? You can directly call read underscore CSV. But if you want to use head or tail or anything, you have to create a data frame and then data frame dot something you have to give, right? Just 1 minute. Sorry. Okay, so I hope you remember this. Okay, so these are all important concepts. You will be asked about it in interviews. So do pay attention. All right. So this is what we had seen, right? So there is one more class called series inside this. inside the pandas, which we will be using, right? And we said data frame is 2D data, two-dimensional data, because you have rows and columns, and you have a class called series, which is one-dimensional. It's one dimension because, sorry, series. So this also has some attributes, methods, and all, which we will see later, right? So series is 1D. Okay, so today let's try to understand what is a data frame, right? So when you say 2D data, this is tabular data. So this has rows and columns. And it's very similar to database tables. And we said whatever you can do with databases, you can do with the data frames also, right? Or whatever you can do with a table, you can do with the data frame. So let's see how it looks like. So, so a data frame has rows and columns. So let's say I have details about employees, right? So I have an employee ID 100. The name of the employee is Thomas. He is a manager and he earns $5,000. The second employee is Mary. She is a programmer. She earns $6,000. The third employee is Kate. She is HR and she earns 4,500. Right? So this is the data, right? So we said data frame has it has many attributes, but one of the attributes is data. So this is the data of the data frame, right? So when you create this, just like you did in, we had in list and all, right? So when you created a list, what happened? Automatically, Python assigned some indexes to it, right? So there were values here, but Python automatically assigned some indexes to it. And what was the purpose of this index? We wanted to access data from it, right? So when you want to take out data from this, you have to use indexes and say, give me what is there in index position 3 or 4 or whatever, right? So that is why we have indexes. Similarly, here also, when you create a data frame, Python automatically gives indexes for columns. So this is the 0th column, right? Or let me write it a little above. So this is the 0th column. This is column number 1, column 2, column 3. Similarly, rows are also given indexes, right? So this is column 0, column 1, column, sorry, not column, row 1, row 2. So this is available always, right? So these are default indexes or indices, right? So this is also default. So these are called index labels, right? So row indexes are called index labels. And this is called a column index. So whether you want it or not, this will be always there, right? But optionally, you can give names for these variables, sorry, columns. You can give, but this is optional. If you want, you can give, but you'll always give, right? Without that, it wouldn't make much sense. So you can call it EID. You can call this ename. You can call this job. You can call this salary, right? So these are column names. And these are not labels. These are indexes. Row index, and this is the column index, right? So additionally, it is possible to give names for columns. Just a moment. All right, so you can give names for columns. Sorry. Okay. So now, so column names are optional, right? So if you want, you can specify, but you have to specify it, right? So Python will not know what are column names. It will just give some numbers, right? So that is default. So which is, so till now, if you see, it is all very similar to your database table, right? So tables will have columns will have names and all that. But when it comes to data frames, right? So it is also possible to give some names for rows, right? So which is not possible in tables. Rows don't have any names. But in Python, in pandas, you can do that, right? So you could say this is E1, E2, any name you can give, right? So I'm just giving it E1, E2, E3. So string values you can give. So these are called index labels. So everything I have written in blue is actually optional, right? So if you want, you can give, otherwise you can. Otherwise you can give, sorry, 1 second. So let's create this, right? So let us see how we can create it. So how do we create an object? Do you remember how we created an object? We want to create P1. You have to mention the name of the class. And then you have to give the attributes, right? So male, Tom, 25. This is how we create. So this is the name of the class. This is the class name. And this is the attributes. And class name is nothing but the data type, right? So this is a new type. Because if you see, if you ask what is the type of P1, it will say P1 is a person. Right? So the same idea you have to keep in mind when we talk about it. So this is our class. So this is also a data type. This is also a data type. So if you want to create an object of this, I have to call the data frame and then I have to pass these parameters, right? It's not necessary to pass all of it, but data definitely, even without that, you can create an empty data frame. But usually you have to give a data, right? So what is data for us? The data frame that we are going to create, this, right? So this part is the data for us. So we have 3 rows and 4 columns, right? So this is our data. So how can I create a data frame? I will say df is equal to data frame. And I have to pass the parameters. In this case, we will pass only the data. But can I directly call the data frame? Where is data frame available? Data frame is available in pandas, right? So we have to import pandas and we'll say pandas.dataframe. But we also saw it is possible to give a shortcut name for pandas because we don't want to keep typing pandas all the time. So we'll say pd.dataframe, right? So df is equal to pd.dataframe. We'll pass the data. So this will create a data frame with this data and default column names and default indexes, right? So let us try that. So I'll call this, we'll create this employee data frame. So I'll call this ED1 or E1. E1, right? So E1 is equal to, how do we specify this data? See, you have 3 rows and 4 columns, right? So every row can be specified as a list. Everything will be specified as a list, and these lists have to be put inside another list. Okay, so this is how we can create. So what is there in the first list? You have 100, Thomas, manager, and 5,000. Similarly, in the second one, you will have 2,000, Mary, programmer, and 6,000. In the third list, we'll have 300, Kate, HR, and 4,500. Right? So these will be the 3 lists, and these 3 lists will be put inside another list. So this is a list of lists. List containing other lists, right? So that is one way to provide the data. You can also provide data as a dictionary, right? So we will see that later. But for the moment, let's do this. So I have to create 3 lists. First, let us create the data, and then we will create the data frame. So this has a list, and inside this, we need 3 lists, right? So if you want 3 rows, 3 lists. If you want 4 rows, 4 lists. Let's have 4 rows at least. Or one more, let's have 5 rows, let's have. So here, 100. You can also type simultaneously if you want. Thomas, manager, 5,000. Right? So this is the first record. The second record, yeah, definitely you have to give all your string values within quotes only, right? Without that, it will not take. 200, Mary, programmer, 6,000. 300, Kate, HR, 4,500. Let's say 400, William. Let's say he is also HR, right? And he earns 5,000 or 5,500. And finally, 500. Let's say Harry. He is a clerk and he earns 2,000. Right? So our data is now ready. Now we can create a data frame. Right? So even, I have to import pandas first. Right? So that is the first thing we need to do. We'll say import pandas as PD. So E1 is equal to PD dot data frame. I have to pass the data, right? So I'll pass only data. Later on, we'll try to pass indexes, columns, and all. And let us try to print E1. So can you see? It has created a data frame with the default column numbers or indexes and row indexes. Right? So that 0, 1, 2, 3 comes from Python. Can you do this? Create this fast. Tell me when you're done. You're done? Still typing? I would like you to
I'm,
create because
Yes,
you
I'm
still
getting
typing,
an
just a minute.
error of no module name pandas.
installed Anaconda, no?
Yes.
It will give capital P.
Um. Oh yeah.
You should give small p.
Okay. Okay.
So again, it's a naming convention that all package names will be small letters.
Package name, but the class will be capital.
Classes will be capitals.
All classes.
All classes.
And what about attributes?
Attributes will be small letters, lowercase.
Okay. Thank you.
Attributes, functions, all those would be lowercase.
If we have to add like a bigger data set to do each and everything manually, will be very.
No, we'll be loading from a file, which we will see.
Okay.
But you should also know how to create it manually.
Right. To load the file or read the file also we need data frame.
We will read the data from a flat file into a data frame. You can transfer data from an Excel into this. You can take from SQL into this.
If we want some selective data from a website, like not how do we decide which data will be retrieved from the data frame?
No, that depends. See, from website, you have to do web scraping.
Okay.
Right. So there you have to specify the tags.
Okay. Okay.
This deals with tabular data. So anything that can be converted or interpreted as a table, only that.
Okay.
Ma'am, I'm getting error on line number 3.
What is it saying?
Name error, name PD is not defined.
Did you do this first line?
Okay, just a moment.
Can pandas be used to access data from application like mainframe and all?
No. So if you want to get anything from other applications, you will need some kind of APIs to do that. But
Okay.
from any data source like Excel, XML, JSON files,
Right.
HTML, all those you have some methods to do that.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, it's working now, madam. Thank you.
Okay. Fine. So we have created a basic data frame. We have not given any columns or rows. Python automatically has given this, right? So the same data frame I'll take and we'll see how to give column names, right? So I'll call this data frame 2. So I'll say data frame data, and then I have to say columns is equal to, and the column names I have to provide as a list, right? So the first column would be employee, or I'll keep it all small letters, EID, then e-name, then job, and not John, job, and salary. Right, so now if you see what is there in E2, you have the same data, but column names have been added. So here you're not able to see the indexes, right? But that is already always available. Even if it is not displayed here, that indexes are definitely available. So EID, you can say it is column number 0, or you can say column called EID, right? So whichever way you call it, Python will understand. Don't think this 0, 1, 2, 3 is gone, right? So it's just not displayed, that's all.
I didn't understand the logic when you said E2. We have labeled the table as E1, no? But you have written your E2.
I'm just creating two separate data frames, one with column names and other without column names. So these are two different objects that I've created.
But But in E2, there is no data. Then how is the column names picking the E1 data?
No, I have mentioned data. No, here also I have mentioned data. So where is data? This is data.
Okay, okay. Got it.
All right. So I'll create another data frame, right? So E3 with the same data, same columns, right? But I will also give some index names. So I'll call this EDF. Right? So because we'll be using this for our examples. So I'll call this EDF. Here I'll take the same data. I'll give the same column names, but I will give indexes also. Right? So I'll say index is equal to, again, all the indexes I have to give in a list. So I'll just call this E1, E2, E3, E4, E5. Right? So to do that, I can say E1, E2, E3, E4, and E5. Right? So these are the row indexes. Right? So for rows also, we are giving some names. I'll write it on multiple lines so that it will be readable. Right? So these are the three attributes we are mentioning. So now can you see EDF contains 5 rows, 4 columns. Columns have been given names. Rows have also been given names. But you also have the indexes at the backend. Right? So this is also available by default. So don't worry. Don't think that it's not. Oh, and by the way, if you see what is the type of these, right? So if you check what is the type of E1, E2 or EDF, it will say this is a data frame, right?
Excuse me, ma'am.
Hmm.
Ma'am, I got error.
What does it say?
PD dot data frame.
What is the error? The last line.
Module pandas has no attribute data frame.
Capital D, capital F.
Okay. Please show your screen, ma'am.
My screen, or you want to share?
Your screen, ma'am.
It is shared only.
Uh-huh. Upwards. Okay, okay. Thank you.
That's why classes should always have capitals. And if there are two words in the class name, all of them should be. Yesterday, remember bank account we created. So B and A both were capitalized. So similarly for data frame, D and F should be capitalized. Done. Scroll up. Just do this one, right? So just do this one. There's nothing to scroll up, only the data I have given. And create the last data frame, EDF only. Right. Priya, what is the error you are getting? It take this long to type?
Done, ma'am.
All right, fine. So at least this last one you should all have created, right? So we'll be using this going forward, EDF. Okay, so now having created this, so we'll see how we can access data from this, right? So to access data from a data frame, we can use the indexes or we can use the names that we have given or the labels we have given. So if you want to access data using index, right? So you have to use ILOC. How to use it, I'll show you, right? So I stands for the index. If you want to use only the labels, right? So whether it is column names or row labels, you have to use LOC. Right, so this you have to remember. access data using index, you use ILOC. And to access data using the labels given, you will use LOC, right? So now how do we use this ILOC and LOC, right? So let us say I call this EDF, right? So this is called EDF. So I can say from EDF, I want to access something. So you have to specify rows, comma, columns. Sorry, not EDF, dot ILOC or LOC, right? So it doesn't matter. So EDF dot LOC, for example, right? Rows and columns. Or you have to say EDF dot ILOC rows, comma, columns. But how do we specify this rows and columns, right? So the row and column in both cases have to be specified by mentioning the starting value, colon, ending value. So this is very similar to the slicing that we did, right? So rows have to be mentioned by giving the starting colon, ending value. Similarly, columns, right? So columns also should be specified by mentioning starting, colon, end. How about ILOC? In the case of ILOC, remember ILOC is used for numbers. So here you will say starting, colon, ending +1. Just like in a list, right? So we saw if you want to get up to the 5th element, you have to mention 6, right? So similarly, column also starting, colon, end +1. Right, so this is how you can access rows and columns. So let's see how to access columns, right? So access columns. So I can say, let's say I want this ename column, right? So I could say EDF dot LOC, right? So if I want the column, I will say give me all the rows, right? So rows is starting from ending, right? I want all the rows, but column number 1. Here there is no starting or ending. So we just say, give me the first column. Sorry, LOC, no? If you are using LOC, you have to use the name, right? So you will say ename. If you are using ILOC, you can say EDF dot ILOC, get me all the rows and column at index position 1. Both will give you the ename column, right? Now, if you want multiple columns, right? So there are 2 options. You might want a series of columns, or you might want to take random columns, right? So you might want to take ename and salary, or you might want to take ename to salary. So if you want random columns, you have to specify it as a list, right? So you'll say edf.loc, give me all the rows, but columns, which columns I want, that has to be mentioned as a list, right? So I want EID and job, right? So I've randomly taken 2 columns. If I'm using ILOC, if I want to use the index, I would say dot ILOC, all the rows. Columns, I want 0th column and 2nd column. Right, so this is how you can take random columns. What if you want to take columns next to each other? You will say edf.loc, all the rows starting from Okay. EID colon job. So what all will I get? I'll get EID, ename and job. Or I can say EDF dot, are you able to see? ILOC, all rows, starting from 0, which I don't have to specify, up to column number. If I want to, I have to specify 3. I can say 0:3, but I can leave out that 0. Right, so starting from the beginning till 3. Right, so this is how you can access rows and columns. Columns. But before we move on, right, so there are a couple of exceptions to accessing to these rules. Right, so what is the first exception? Another bracket to close, which one? This one, yes. Yeah, here we need one more bracket. Right, so this is my orange bracket. This is my outer bracket, right? So there are a couple of exceptions, right? So first exception is for columns. So columns can be accessed without LOC or ILOC. Right, so when you're accessing columns, you can leave out LOC or ILOC, right? So no need for LOC/ILOC. You can directly say EDF of ename. Right? Or you could say EDF of ename, comma, job. Again, this has to be given as a separate. Right? Slice, I think it will not allow, but let us see. So this is the first exception, right? So for columns, in certain cases, you can leave out the LOC or ILOC. The second exception is for rows. Right, so when we come, yeah. We'll talk about it when we come to rows, right? So that means here I can also say EDF of ename. Right, or this can be written as EDF of, within the inner bracket, I can say EID and job. Right, so let's try these out first. Let's try accessing columns first. But this rule you remember, right? So rows, comma, columns, and rows is specified by starting and ending. Column is also specified by starting and ending, right? So accessing columns. So first let us do it without LOC, ILOC. I would say ename. Right? I can also say EDF dot ILOC, all the rows and column number 1. Or I can say EDF dot LOC, all rows and ename. Sorry, ename. Right, so these are 3 different ways of accessing the same column. Right, so this is accessing one column. Okay, did you do this? Let me know once you finish. I have to do a little faster. Done. Okay, so let us see how to get random columns, right? So I'll say EDF, another list. So I'll take EID and job, right? So if I have to do it using ILOC, all rows, and again within a list, what is this? 0 and 2, right? So 0, comma 2. Or I can say EDF dot LOC, all rows, and EID, comma, job. Right, so these are 3 ways of randomly accessing values. Let me know once you're done. Type a little fast.
Ma'am, please scroll down.
Done. So we have to move a little fast, right? So we have seen how to access columns in different ways, right? So now coming to rows. Accessing rows. So in this case, we'll say all columns we want, but which rows we want, right? So let us say I want row number 2. I want Mary's record. So I can say row number 1, or I can say E2, right? So I'll say, so again, accessing a single row. Single row, right? So in this case, if I want E2, I could say EDF dot LOC, right? So I want E2, and then I want all the columns, right? So this is Mary's record. Or I can say EDF dot. Oh, here we didn't give the list thing, no? We didn't give that series of values. So if you want to take continuous columns, right? So here, if you want to take continuous columns, you have to say from EDF, get me all the rows, right? And columns I want starting from EID up to job, right? So the same thing if you want to say in indexes, you have to say dot ILOC, all columns, right? So EID, I can say 0 to 3, or I can leave out that 0 and just say 3, right? Because if you don't mention this, it means start at the beginning. It will give you the same result, right? So this is how you can access columns. When you want continuous columns from the data frame, this is how you can do that, right? Okay, let me quickly show you rows, right? So it's exactly the same. So all, so if you want rows E2, E2, and then all columns, right? Or EDF dot ILOC, row 1 and all columns, right? So this is how you can specify a single row. If you want random rows, right? So what should you do? See, that is up to you, right? So sometimes it is convenient to use indexes, sometimes it is convenient to use column names, and sometimes you will have data frames which don't have any column names, right? So in that case, you have to use a number. So we will be using it interchangeably. All right. So now if you want random columns, right? So we'll say EDF I want column E2 and E4, right? So that I will give it as a list, and I want all the columns. Oh, I forgot to say LOC dot LOC, right? So I want E2 and E4. The same thing if you're mentioning ILOC, we'll say EDF dot ILOC. I want columns from columns 1 and no, what is E2? 1 and 3. Right, so columns 1 and rows 1 and 3 and all columns. Right, so that will give you Mary and William. But if you want a series of values, right, so again what you'll do, you'll say edf.loc. I want from E2 or let's say E1 till E4, right? So I want from E1 till E4, right? So this is your rows, comma, all the columns, right? So E1 to E4, all the records are fetched. And if you want to do this using ILOC, we'll say edf.iloc. 1, no. What is E1? E1 is 0, right? So 0 colon, what do I want? Till E4 I want, no? So I have to specify 5, right? So that is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Colon up to 4 and all columns, right? Or you can leave out this 0, right? So if you don't mention it, it means begin at the beginning and go till the 4th row, right? And the same thing to do with LOC, edf.loc. E1 colon E4 colon E4. So this is how you can access rows and columns. And what is the exception here? See, we said there is an exception for rows, right? So the exception for rows is you can leave out no need to mention columns. When you are fetching columns, you definitely have to give rows, even though you are saying all rows, right? So similarly, when you are fetching rows, you have to specify all the columns. But the exception here is there is no need to mention columns, right? So that means whatever we have written till now, right here, anyway, I had forgotten. So whatever we have written till now will work even without that colon for accessing rows, right? So I could say something like this. edf.loc, there was no need to give this column, right? And edf.iloc, right? So it is okay to leave out that colon at the end. Are you talking to me?
Please scroll down a little bit.
That's all.
Not this one, down.
That's all. You want to go up?
Yeah, little bit. Just to confirm a formula. You need to check that continuous column formula. Yes, this one. Just a minute. Thank you. Yes, it's working, ma'am. Thank you.
Just remember these rules. Okay, so this is the standard. These are one or two exceptions, right? So let's take a break and come back. It's 1:10. Let's come back at 1:20. And then we will look at some methods and all here. Right, so 1:20.
Ma'am, please do that. Show that screen. Formula one.
Accessing rows, I'll keep.
Yes, this one. Thank you.
Are all the files uploaded in the dashboard? Sorry, on the XLR website?
Not yet. I put it all on the drive.
Okay. So it is saved from which name in the drive?
I've shared you the link, no?
Actually, this is my first class. I have to go through all the videos and cope up with everything.
I'll share the drive link. You can just click on it and it will be available.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. I've seen one or two videos. I have still yet to finish to watch the other videos.
I just shared the link. You can click on it and see if you're able to access. All right, give me 2 minutes. I'll get some water and come. So we'll continue from 1:20 onwards. Hi. So I hope you have done till here, right? So we have seen how to access rows and columns using the indexes and the columns, indexes and labels. Okay. So now let us see how we can create a data frame using a dictionary, right? So the same data, if you want to create using dictionary, you don't have to create, right? So I'll just show you how to do that. You don't have to sit and type, okay? Because we'll see how to load from a file, that is more important. But if at all you want to create using a dictionary, right? So you would say your, I'll call it data dictionary, right? So this would be, so I have to give the column name, and then the values I have to provide as a list, right? So let us say I have 3 employees. So these are the employee IDs. Then e-name. These are the e-names, right? So Tom, John, Jill, right? And then let's say the job, or let's just have salary, right? So I won't have job and all. So sal, let's say 1,000, 2,000, and 3,000, right? I gave 2 commas. Where did I give? Here. So it's supposed to be 100. So now I can create a dictionary, right? So I will call it dict.
Ma'am, when you created the data, and now you're creating data dictionary, what is the difference between the two?
See, here data is given as a list.
Yes.
So that is one way of creating a data frame. The other way is we create the, provide the data in the form of a dictionary, and based on that, we will create a data frame. Right, so we are just providing the data in different ways. That's all.
So in data, we can only input the data and then we have to index and label it separately. But in data dictionary, we can do both together. Is it like that?
In data dictionary, you can give column and data together.
Okay.
Whereas here, column has to be given separately. But here also, the indexes, the row indexes have to be separately given. Row labels have to be separately given. Right?
Okay.
So if I say dict df, and if you, sorry, dict data dict. And if I print dict df, right? So the column names are automatically taken. These are not provided. If you want that, you have to separately give this as an index, right? So index is equal to, you can say E1, E2, E3, or anything else you want to do. Right? So this would give you an index as well. So this is another way of creating a data frame, right? But the most common way that you will be using is how to read it from a file, right? So before we do that, I think, okay, I think here I forgot to tell you one more thing. When you're accessing rows, right? So you can access rows based on a condition, right? So based on condition. So remember, yesterday I told you whatever we are doing, you should always equate it to your SQL, how it is done in SQL, right? So in SQL, you can say select. So what is this equal to? Whatever we have seen till now, right? So for example, this, right? So this would be equivalent to saying select e-name from table, right? So this is like saying select e-name from table, all e-names will be selected. So here you can say select EID, comma, job from the table, right? So it will give you those two columns. So here we are accessing rows, right? So when you're accessing rows, it is possible to specify a condition. So I can say, get me all the rows, or I can say, get me those rows where a particular condition is satisfied. For example, let us say I want those records where salary is greater than 5,000, right? So in that case, how do we do this here? We can say from EDF, get me those records, right? So where EDF of salary is greater than 5,000. So only those rows will be selected. Only 5500 and 6,000 will be selected, right? So you can specify a condition here. So see what will happen when you give this alone. If you give only this, if you say EDF of salary greater than 100, it will only return whether this condition is true or false for each record. For the first record, this condition is false, right? For the second record, it is true. Third record, it is false. Fourth record, it is true. Fifth record, it is false. So now you are saying EDF of this, right? So that means wherever this returns true, those records you return, right? So only E2 and E4 returns true for this condition. So those records are taken, right? So otherwise it might seem like we are saying two times EDF of, right? But that's not the case. First, this will be evaluated. Wherever this returns true, only those rows will be retrieved from EDF. Right, so you can give multiple conditions also, but here we don't have multiple things to mention. But you can give multiple conditions, right? So we can see that a little later when we load a bigger data set, right? So this is also possible. This is the fourth way of accessing rows, right? So now if you go to your drive, right? So I have shared one file called, I have shared 2-3 files. You have something called universities.csv, salaries.csv, and students.csv, right? These three, you can download it. You can save it in your folder, right? So download one by one, otherwise it'll zip and download, right? So download these and put it into the same folder that we created. Make sure that your code and the data files, right? So they are in the same place. Go to the folder where your code file is, and there you have to paste it. See, wherever your files are, right? So you had created a folder. I'm hoping you are all putting it in the same place. See, under C:\users, your directory, your name, under that you created a file. That's where I'm hoping your files are all there. So there only you have to put, right? So make sure, see, this is my dframes.ipynb. So in the same folder, you have to put salaries. Wherever your code file is, in the same place, you put this. So if you go here, right? So if you go to the home page, you should be able to see your file name and the 3 CSV files. Both should be in the same place. Just verify if it is there. Done? Okay. All right. So now if you have done that, right? So if you have downloaded it, we will read that file, right? So to read it, we will use the read underscore CSV method. And if you see this method, right? So this is directly under pandas. So I can say pd dot read underscore CSV, and I can specify the name of my CSV file. Right, so first we will read that universities.csv. And be careful, you have to give capital U. It has to be exactly like what is mentioned here. Right, so spelling, everything should be correct. Right, so we will go to our file and we'll say pd dot, or I'll do it here. So we'll say, I'll call this some uni data or something, right? So uni data. This is equal to pd dot read underscore CSV universities.csv, right? And now if you see what is there in uni data, let me also open that universities.csv so that file can be opened with this Excel file, right? So I can right click and say open with Microsoft Excel. And you can see this is the Excel file, right? So CSV is basically comma separated. So that can also be opened using an Excel file. So if you open this, this is how it looks like. So the same thing, right? So has been taken from this file and it has been loaded into a data frame using this read underscore CSV method. So this, if at all you get an error saying no such file, it means you didn't put it along with the code. You have put it somewhere else. Let me know if you're getting this out.
I'm getting an error of no attribute.
No attribute called what?
Read underscore CSV.
Read the full error.
Module pandas has no attribute read underscore CSV.
Check the capital letters. Everything should be lowercase.
No. Now the error is no such file or directory.
That's because you didn't put it in the same place. Check in the home folder. If you see your file, and don't keep it all as untitled, okay? Give them some names.
Okay.
So this and the CSV file should be in the same folder. If you keep it as untitled, even you won't know which file is what.
Okay.
Ma'am, please show the file where we import the library.
Import the library, pandas.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, done.
Ma'am, it is okay, but for this, you said that one more library we have to import.
No, we don't have to.
Ma'am, because I get error as name PD is not defined.
And that's because you didn't run this. Can you run this line of code?
Yes, ma'am.
Then you
Ma'am,
should.
again I will do.
I think you didn't give dot. You might have given a comma or something here. PD dot read underscore CSV. Yes.
Ma'am, now showing no such file or directory. shown.
Yeah, that's because you didn't put this in the same place. Did you first of all give a name to the file?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then go to this home page and see if that file and your CSV are in the same place or not.
Okay, ma'am.
Mhm. So you have to go to that folder, go to C drive, users, your username. So there you go and copy the files.
And we can also upload PDFs.
You can also do that. You can also upload. And from wherever you have put that CSV files, you can just select it and upload it.
Ma'am, is it necessary like both file requiring same folder?
See, that way you can directly read it. Otherwise, you have to give the full file path. You have to copy the full path of the file and then you have to mention /, wherever you have put the file, the whole path you have to copy and paste here.
Ma'am,
Ah.
where did you get so you know once you said that if you do PD dot, you can get the list of things which can come under pandas.
dir PD, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like the list, like how read underscore CSV, read underscore HTML. There was a list which comes.
Yeah, you can say dir and PD. dir PD.
Okay.
Okay, so you can see all these read underscore. So all these formats it can read.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Are you all able to read? Anybody still facing issues? Right.
Now I am looking, ma'am. I pasted path.
Now you are getting what?
Ma'am, same output.
Okay, you can.
24 crores.
Fine. So as long as you get that, fine.
Yes, ma'am.
So we have read the content from outside pandas and we have loaded it into our pandas data frame, right? So now this data frame contains all this data. So you can always now manipulate this, right? So we can use this data and do some operations on it. Fine. So now, see, you can see this has column names, right? So that is coming from the header that is given here. So it is taking the first line as column names and it has created a data frame, right? But what if you want to have indexes also? Just like we had E1, E2, E3, right? So if you want to have some label for rows also, one option, of course, you can say U1, U2, U3, but that doesn't make sense, right? So why do we need indexes? Because we want to access data. So let's say I want the data. Oh, by the way, what is this data all about? This data talks about details about different universities, right? So here it says for Brown University, if you want to get admission, you have to score 1310 in the SATs, right? So these are the admission tests that they have. Then top 10. So 89% of students in this college are all top 10 students. The acceptance ratio is 22, right? So that means if 100 people apply, only 22 people will be selected. This is the student faculty ratio, right? So for every 13 students, there is one faculty. The fee you have to pay for this is this, right? And what do you say? The graduation rate, right? So out of 100, 94 people end up graduating. right? So very few people fail or drop out or whatever. So like this, we have collected information about 25 universities in the US. So now these indexes can be used to fetch details about specific university. But if I give labels like this, right? So this might be completely useless because if I want Princeton, then I should know where is Princeton, right? So what is the number for Princeton? So this will be U15. So then I have to say, get me the details about this particular row. Here we have 25, so you can take a look and you can find out. But if you have thousands of records, right? So you won't even know which is U237, what a university it is, you won't know. So what makes more sense? I can convert the university name into index, right? So this is very similar to selecting primary keys in a table. How would you select a primary key? You will make sure that it has unique values and it is not null, right? So what if I make this as index? Then it becomes very easy for me. I can just say, get me the details of Duke. I don't have to worry where it is, right? So if I want, so let's say I call this uni data, right? So from this, I can say from uni data dot loc, get me the row for Duke, right? So this will automatically give you the record for Duke, right? So I hope you follow the logic that I'm trying to tell you, right? So it is better to convert this column into index because the purpose of index is to fetch data. So anybody would ask, see, tell me the details about Brown or tell me the details about Stanford, right? So it's better to make this as the index. So if you want to convert one column as an index, you can do it in two ways. One, while reading itself, you can specify, I want to use this column as my index. Or after reading it, you can set this column as the index, right? So let's try the first way. So while reading itself, right? So I will say, I'll give it a different name, right? So I will call this UDF. Let that uni data be there, right? So I'll say UDF is equal to read this, but my index column, right? So should be UNIV. And be careful, you have to specify your uppercase, lowercase, and all exactly like this, right? So now I'm saying make UNIV as the index column. So now let us see how my data frame looks like. Can you see the difference between this and this? Right, so you here the numbers are indexes. Here also numbers are indexes, but it's not shown. But this column has been converted into index. Right, so a particular column has been converted into index. So now if I want details about Duke, right, so I don't know where it is present in the data frame, but I can still say from UDF, get me the record corresponding to Duke. Right, so it gives me all the details about Duke. So instead of calling it U1, U2, U3, it makes more sense to convert a particular column into index. Right, so I hope you can see the difference between this and this. So here you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 columns. But here you have only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns. One column has been converted into an index. Can you try this?
But how can you say it as column converted into index? It is more like the column is converted into a label form, no? That is why I think I was getting confused, because I understood labels are string values and indexes numeric values.
No, these are called index labels.
Okay.
Right, so I'm calling them index. You can say index labels if you want to specifically say that.
Index labels. Okay. Index numbers and index labels.
Hmm.
Okay.
That makes more sense. You can say that. Right.
Index.
Please show the formula at 39. Yeah,
30?
this one 40. Yeah. 4040. Yeah, thank you. Yes, working. Thank you.
Fine. So we have loaded the data, right? So we have seen how to create data frames, different ways, how to access rows and columns, right? So let's quickly look at some attributes of the data frame, right? So I'll take the UDF, or I can say take EDF also, right? So this is also a data frame. So I can say, oh, this, we don't take the data like that here. So you have the columns, right? So EDF dot columns. Notice I'm not giving open and close braces, right? So the reason being this is an attribute. Similarly, I can look at the shape of the data frame, right? So it says there are 5 rows and 4 columns. So what else? So if you take UDF, right? So if you take UDF dot columns, you can see SAT top 10 acceptance ratio. These are the columns. But if you take unidata dot columns, you will see UNIV is also a column. Right, so UNIV is also column. But here we have converted that column into index or index label. So that is not shown as a column here. Right. And if you want to see the shape of this, sorry, UDF dot shape, it will say there are 25 rows and 6 columns, right? Similarly, if you see unidata dot shape, it will say there are 7 columns. Right, so if you take unidata dot shape, it will say there are 25 rows and 7 columns, right? So these are some of the attributes of a data frame. Right, so I'll stop here. Tomorrow we will go through all, or not all, the most important functions in data frame. So tomorrow I would suggest that you all watch me type, right? Because if you sit and type, we will not be able to complete it. We have seen how to create these data frames, right? So once you know how to do that, you can practice. Tomorrow you can watch me typing, right? So that if there are any queries, questions, you can ask me, right? So you can focus on what I am doing, right? Because if you have to type, that will take another 2-3 days, right? So you know how to create this. So from tomorrow onwards, right? So I will type, you can watch, and we'll see what all functions are there. What is the use of those, right? All that we'll see. This I will upload onto your drive, right? So I think this also might be helpful. This also could be helpful. I'll share that as well. So the frames. Notes. And let me upload it.
Oh, ma'am, your screen is stuck, I think. Hello? Ma'am left.
Our net connection is not working. That may
I
be the
think
reason.
I got disconnected. Yeah, I have uploaded it. Okay, so I put this here. So you can download it and practice. Okay. Fine, then let's start for, stop for today. We will continue tomorrow. Bye then. Do practice whatever we have done.
Ma'am, so far all the files are uploaded in the drive.
Yes.
Whatever you have taught. Okay.
Yes. Everything is there.
Okay.
Fine then. See you all.
Okay.
Have a nice day. Bye.